Hello, today I have another repair. This time, my electronic load from Siglent is on the chopping block. The issue has been visually apparent in the videos. The display has slowly lost performance over time. It was bad enough that it really wasn't visible in person anymore. The camera actually made it look a bit better, but the instrument itself has not lost any functionality all this time. The display just went bad. What went wrong? I'm not sure. The display still appears to function, but it's like the contrast has gone around the perimeter. So anyway, it's time to tell a little story, tear the instrument down, see if this is even repairable, and if so, get the new display and see if it can be blacker than night again. It's going to end up with a spot of dust on the glass, I know it. Winter is cold, and so is my beer, so drink some of that and hang out while I demolish this thing and do so many things the hard way. Hopefully this doesn't end with a broken analyzer. I just cursed it, didn't I? It's going to get technical, so ask questions if you have them. There's an affiliate link which earns me a couple %, but costs you nothing in the description, as well as links for more information. Many thanks to my patrons and channel supporters. Okay, time to power this thing up and see what I'm working with. It looks like the screen is very low contrast, and particularly at the edges of the screen, the LCD just is completely washed out. This makes me think the LCD itself is fine. It doesn't look like LCD damage, like a cracked screen or anything, but it looks like one of the backlight layers is delaminated or failed after being constructed. These things are quite complex, and I'll dive into the craziness of these screens later on. There's a lot going on. So the first thing I did is get the latest firmware version, looked around in the software for any controls of the screen itself, and this instrument doesn't appear to have any controls for the LCD itself. There are no mentions in the user manual of any way to control the LCD, so it looks like everything is fixed. So it can't be fixed by adjusting a contrast ratio or adjusting any of the backlight settings. So there isn't a quick fix or a temporary fix to just get the instrument up and running really quickly. It was a nice try, but I know I can't do things the easy way. So the next thing was check if this instrument is still under warranty. Like, hey, if it's free, I'm the demographic for free. So I sent the serial number and model firmware versions along to Siglent and did eventually get a response. It was send us the model, serial, and firmware. Oh yeah. The Round Wheel Service Center, and I have to pay for shipping for this heavy instrument to get it repaired. If they find anything wrong, that would be covered, but if they think it's fine, then I'm on the hook for all the costs. I don't expect anything more from companies these days, so I'm gonna nope the scope out of that mess. There must be another way, a cheaper and much more difficult way, but probably a faster way. Let's be real, versus packing and shipping, waiting, arguing, probably easier this way too. Well, time to void the warranty. It's out by this time anyway, and those little stickers are meaningless. Okay, time to break this thing open. There are plenty of other teardowns out there. This instrument has been on the market a long time, and is really one of the best priced and lab quality options out there. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. The software is buggy. Like a large percentage of the time, it doesn't boot correctly, but I'm going to take advantage of that software. I think model upgrades are falling off of the back of trucks, if you know what I mean. It's fairly straightforward getting into this instrument. The tilting bale locks in at one position, then all the rubber baby buggy bumpers come off with 4 screws each, and these actually hold the metal shell in place as well. Once all of these are removed, the cover slides right off and reveals most of the goodness in this analyzer. Anyway, it's a solid choice that in terms of measurements, I've only had some issues with, mostly the clock being inaccurate, so you have to use the PC software to log things. But that's also buggy and locks out functions of the analyzer for no apparent reason. I submitted a ticket for that too. No answer, no fix. For me, it offers decent remote control and all the connections you need, and all the buttons too, so you can use it manually and easily. It's a variable resistor in a box, and it does that job great. This is a fairly heavy instrument, and I can see why with that giant heatsink doing some serious work. This thing is loaded with MOSFETs that handle generating the load resistance. I'm not sure on the exact configuration, and it isn't within the scope of this video to figure it out or analyze it. It works and does the job it needs to do and doesn't brick itself. It's very clean inside. There are a few interesting things to note here. There's a small transformer which has 2 sets of outputs. One set goes to the logic section, the other goes to the analog section. I call this based on the majority of the electronics being one or the other type. And this instrument is isolated. Isolation, yeah, the thing I talk about all the time. This has both data and power isolation between the digital section and the DC load side or the analog side. You wouldn't want to feed that potentially 150 volts into the logic section. Pop! The MOSFETs have little pads on them, so they are not electrically connected to the heatsink either. Speaking of MOSFETs, what are they? These are transistors that do the switching and load setting. These are the workhorses in this instrument. In this case, the IRFP250N 200 volt 0.075 ohm 30 amp MOSFETs. Big stuff. These can each dissipate up to 214 watts. You need some crazy cooling solution for that, but to keep them from turning into fire, they use a lot of them. Both sides of this heatsink are covered in MOSFETs. There are some really beefy connections going to the front panel. These are the large bus bars with 2 screws in each one connecting to the front panel. This thing can do a lot of current, so it has to be able to handle that without getting too hot itself. The current shunts are these large metal bars near the input terminals. Yes, the 300 watt model has the same number, 3 of these. There are a lot, since this again has to handle that high current, but also needs to have a measurable resistance. The precision here isn't too important. The important thing is that these are stable over a wide range of temperatures. I'm not sure if these are actually the point where the current is measured either. I'm also not sure how the switch's range is. Lots of analog goodness going on, and I don't have time to explore it all since I just want to get it working again. Overall, it's a very clean and well-designed instrument. I've been very happy with it, and the internals of this make me even more happy. It looks like an instrument punching well above its weight class. There are a few interesting markings on the PCB. There's one here that has just a generic marking for the different models, 1000X series. Interesting, well, this other mark literally just says it's a 1030X, which is the flagship in the series. It looks like everything is populated. Again, the current bars are 3 in the 300 watt model also, so confirming one of these higher end models is exactly the same inside. Interesting. I'm sure there's a post on the EEV blog forum that may have some information about this. It has a lot. It's a long post, very long, over several years. I didn't read it all. No idea if anyone's replaced the display yet, so maybe this is something new. This probably isn't worthy of a video, is it? Anyway, the LCD is connected to the main PCB with a flat flex cable. This cable is held in place with tape as well, so some vibration resistance. Again, another nice touch. So carefully loosen the tape and loosen the clips that hold the flat cable in and pull this cable out. Next, all the screws need to be removed that hold the front panel in. There is one knob on the front panel that needs to be removed. It's just a pull-off knob, no set screw holding this on. Remove the 4 screws holding the front panel terminals in place, and then the front panel comes right off. Getting closer, but our hopes of seeing that LCD are dashed by a metal panel. More screws, remove more parts. Okay, it's still not revealing its secrets. Okay, a few more screws out. There is one clip. This puts pressure on the buttons that are under the screen since there isn't enough room for a screw here. The trouble here is going to be putting it back together. With the little nuts on the side that like to fall out, this is mostly just trouble with trying to video while putting it back together. You need to take care removing the flat flex cable. These little clips are very small and sensitive, so be careful on this part if you are doing this by yourself. There is also some tape holding this in place. Good care for detail. Remove that and another metal shield. Okay, eventually this has to come apart. All right, finally getting that out. There's a little glass plate in front of the screen. Neat. I didn't realize this had real glass in it. The part does have a little bit of a cloudy haze on it. I wonder if it's the glass or the LCD that's at fault. Well, one way to find out. Hook it all back up and see if the display has the issue on its own. And no surprises here. Yes, the LCD itself is showing the issues. It doesn't appear to get any better by tapping on it or pushing on any part of the screen. My guess is that this is an issue with the backlighting part of this display. Well, we've got a few things to investigate. The display has a part number on it, and I also have the part number from the LCD driver chip. So checking out some of the possible configuration information and seeing if there's a way to adjust things manually as a stopgap. Sometimes there is a resistor that sets contrast since it doesn't appear to have a software option. It looks like in this case the chip is purely digitally controlled, so the software is telling the LCD what it wants for settings. It would be nice if this was exposed in the software somewhere. Anyway, the LCD has a part number on it, and it looks like there are no shortage of options out there on the market for this display. There are some finer details you need to check, and it's always a little gamble buying the cheapest display you can find. It'll likely will be a used pole, or if it's new direct to you, you need to check that it has the correct pinout and matching specifications to the display you have. There are often tons of small options with these displays. After looking around, I found a more or less local one with fast delivery on eBay. It came in an envelope with nothing but paper wrapped around it. Nice. Not even a piece of cardboard over the screen. Well, hopefully it still works. So before getting too far, test the LCD. Make sure the problem is resolved and the LCD is correct and powers up. The pinout matches and everything looks to be the same, so shove the wires in all the holes and test things out with the new display. Don't put anything back together though without testing. That's a guarantee of finding out that the new display is also broken. Okay, as jankily as possible, prop all this stuff up and get some juice and check if this LCD is good and compatible. When you do stupid shit like this, make sure you don't bend or twist those flex cables too much, or you'll be putting in another order. Delicate work this, done by a fool with shaky hands. Okay, power button time, and nothing happened. The power isn't on. Try again, and this time, boot up screen, and already looks better. Once in the main screen, yeah, that looks like new. Okay, now to put it together and not get any dust between the glass and the LCD. Yeah. Lost about 5 minutes of footage in the middle here. Try and use the phone as a camera, it's too unreliable. Looks better when it works, but the Sony is more reliable and focuses better. Anyway, reassembly time. The most annoying part is this little nut that fits behind this circuit board. On the other side, they put little metal bits in that hold the nuts in place. On this side, they rely on the circuit board to hold them in place, and they regularly fall out of place. Also, the USB socket on the front panel gets stuck on everything when you're trying to put it back. So carefully getting all these things aligned is the hardest part. The little buttons can be a little difficult to get back into their respective holes, but generally will fall back into place. Also, make sure when putting the screws back into the plastic to go backwards first until you'll hear a little click or feel a little bump. This is the screw falling back into its original groove. If you cut a new groove in the plastic, it will strip very easily. If you use the original groove, it should hold just as well as the original installation. Okay, and the magic of filmmaking, this isn't filmmaking, but yeah, one final touch. Push the little knob back onto the front of the unit and give it some final tests. Power it up and it looks great. The unit powers up and the display looks great. Doing the LCD test and all the colors look vibrant and not washed out. It's everything I could ask for. I'll do some tests of the performance and alignment to make sure things are still in spec. I compare with a 6.5 digit multimeter for these, so transfer, not amazing, but good enough. Alright, time to tear this defective LCD module apart and see if there's anything interesting going on inside this little package. There's very little chance of being able to see what went wrong, but still interesting to see all the layers. The backlight is where I am suspecting issues in this display. It obviously still works, but it looks like the layers around the edges may have some issues. Again, I probably won't be able to see anything, but these thin layers having a little degradation can cause improperly aligned light that can cause the LCD to be incapable of letting light through properly or letting too much light through. This isn't a description of an LCD, so I'm just gonna fly through this thing. Basically, polarized light, not sure which kind of polarization, shines in the back, and the LCD is either in alignment or not in alignment with that polarized light. So either shines through or it doesn't. In this case, it is a backlit specific display. The LCD module itself looks good, no cracks or broken areas, so I don't think this is the part that actually went bad. The display is edge lit from the bottom, so this row of LEDs has to be spread out evenly and send light to the entire display. From here, the evenly spread out light, diffused light, goes through the polarizing layer and a few more layers. Something within one of these layers must have shifted or become unglued. That's a guess though, from what I can demonstrate here at least. I'm no LCD expert and there's a ton of science in this. Siglent doesn't make this LCD. They buy from an expert that makes this part, which is good for me. It means I can buy a replacement and shove it in here and it works again. If you have a better idea what's going on, leave it down below. Well, it's back together and it works again and magically does more watts and has more digits of precision. No idea how that happened. I guess can't really ask for more, right? Hopefully this can help you with a relatively simple repair and identify ways to do things a little less expensive than shipping an entire unit back to the factory for something that's a $10 part and about 30 minutes of screwdriver work to get it all done. Nothing to it. I wish Siglent would just send me this screen or have a parts store. It isn't average consumers buying this bit of kit, but other than that, done. Fully a success, which I spell thusly, since yeah, I got one spot of dust in between the display window. Idiot. Oh well, I'm not selling it anywhere. The other two that I have are the ones in the video now. This one is going to the other setup, and by that I mean the floor. There's no room to move in here. The next video is about 240 watt USB-C adapters, which is well overdue. Hopefully get something out on that donut battery, which, you know, what the specifications could mean. Not chemistry, I don't know anything about that. But yeah, now that the hype is dead, time to get a video out on it. Late as usual. Thanks for watching. There are links in the description. Goodbye.